Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I do a little bit of a health update. I was going to talk about this in another video. I mentioned it, and then I just got tired out. I feel, I'm getting better every day. My wife is the same. It wasn't, something where with COVID, the first time we had COVID, um, there was, like difficulty breathing to such an extent where going to the hospital was a possibility. And so that's the fundamental difference between whatever these two things are. And, I just got a comment from a dopey flubie. Flubies are people who deny the existence of COVID and say it's the flu, which, the position itself I could understand. If you didn't have it, or you had a mild case, or you didn't know anybody else who had it, and the government lies, I can understand why you would possibly come up with that idea. And then there's all these other people on the internet who are pushing this idea that it's just the flu, right? And this person left a dopey comment saying, if you don't watch the news, your flu symptoms wouldn't be so bad, right? Which is, it's the attitude. I mean, the flubies and the, it's just the flatters, it's flat, or it's, whatever, it's a manners, right? It's a man, it's just a man, it's a man. All these bumper sticker lines, and then of course the stuff with the cubies. It's the lack of social etiquette. Like you're the kind of people that, and I'm not talking about what your beliefs are. I'm talking about how you behave towards other people, because you're completely entitled to believe it's just the flu, right? Fine. Like I said, I could understand why people think that. Until I got it, I had no idea myself if it was fake or real or whatever. And so it's not a matter of your belief. It's just the way that you present it to other people, right? Like you're the kind of people that, you walk away from conversations going, what did I say? Like you were offending people left and right. And this is coming from somebody who is, lacks social skills, right? Like my brother and I used to talk about it. My dad was bad at it. Just saying the wrong thing, not knowing what to say socially, not being good at, like, somebody would just come from a funeral and you're like, oh, did you have a good time? Like just not knowing how to have social interactions. And so when I look at you and see social incompetence, that means that you really suck at it. Like if I see that you suck at it, right? And that you're, it's just the way that you talk to people with like a level of arrogance, talking down to them, and then just, being wrong all the time. If you're right, you're right. At least you're right, but you're wrong all the time. There's these group of people in the truth community who talk down to people, are condescending, and they're just wrong all the time, and they don't get it, right? Like they just, it's a problem with your personality, not your beliefs. You have personality issues, right? The inability, and, it's the beliefs in the sense of being wrong on top of it. Because when I first experienced COVID, I was shocked that I got it. I was socially isolated, I mean, I don't interact with people very much. And it would just come out. Like it was just a new thing. It was in April of 2020 when people were first just starting to get it. There hadn't been really a spike yet. And I had a sore throat for a couple of days, and I had we had like ice cream, which we usually don't have, which was weird. That my throat got worse, and, I get a lot of sore throats because I talk a lot here. I mean, when you use your vocal cords every day for a couple of hours, but even before that, when I was, when this was, the YouTube channel was just about to take off, for about 2 years before that, I used to get sore throats that I associate with spiritual work that was being done on my, the energetic centers that are responsible for my, my vocal cords, my voice, and my being able to do this work. Like spiritual work was done on me before this YouTube channel took off. And a lot of it was like, I used to have pain in the throat, sharp pain. I didn't know what was happening. And with the heartfulness system, there's always spiritual work is being done at, power centers and things like that. If you're going to be given a gift or something, like I was here. So there's this work that was being done. I always associate being sick with, things to do with the heartfulness system, because oftentimes being sick is to do with cleaning. And usually after I'm sick, like I just go up another level spiritually and in terms of my work and things. So, and that happened with the sore throats. Oftentimes my videos would get really good right after this, the energy would flow better and there would just be a bump in my abilities after I got a sore throat. So I didn't think anything of it. I had this sore throat. And then I was walking around the yard and I started gasping for breath. Weirdest thing. Like I couldn't breathe, like I was having an asthmatic attack. I had one little asthmatic thing that happened, I would say about 15 years ago. It was because there was mold in the bathroom next to the room that I slept in. We had this one bathroom in this house, and it had mold in it or something. And I started to have some problems breathing at night. Like I had to, maybe it was a month long, breathing issues, right? And so I was like, wow, this sucks, It was a bummer. But that was the only time I've ever experienced anything like this in terms of shortness of breath. I had never had pneumonia. I never had any, respiratory, deep respiratory type of illness. And I'm walking around the yard and I'm gasping for breath. And I was like, wow, what is this? And then I barely knew anything about COVID, but I knew that there was breathing issues. And so then I watched a video that just happened to be up on like YouTube trending, describing what happens with COVID. And I realized, oh my God, I got most of these symptoms, right? And so that was like a bummer. And then, it just got worse from there. It was particularly bad at night. My wife got it as well. And, we both had, the big issue was shortness of breath, especially at night. And, because when you can't breathe, it's a big deal. It really affects you. It's very stressful. And so I had a couple of really bad nights, then started to get better. And then I just, my energy level collapsed. So it was the post-COVID stuff that made it really bad. And then I went and got blood tested, like I said, and all my, my hormone levels were down. My thyroid wasn't functioning. I was pre-diabetic. I had, all these levels that were going the wrong way. And my energy level had just tanked. And I just couldn't get better. Every once in a while, I would suffer shortness of breath. Not as bad as it had been before. This went on for about 6 to 8 months, almost like a year, maybe even a year, where there was always once in a while a flare-up. But like there were things when we were putting in the fencing, and I would bend over to nail the fence to the fence post. Like I would get dizzy, and then my energy level would just tank. So any sort of tilting of the head, or there's just I just didn't have it. Like I just wasn't strong. I could only walk around the yard like once instead of like 10 times. Whatever exercise, and I just didn't have any sort of juice, right? Any sort of staying power when I was doing chores around the yard, whatever it was, farm stuff. So I went to this alternative, a sort of a holistic chiropractor, and they ran all these blood tests. They found out all these things, and then I slowly was taking different type of supplements and homeopathy and things like this. All these things that they prescribed to me, are things that we had taken before, and some herbal stuff and whatever it was. And I eventually rebuilt my system. My stomach would swell up. That was the other thing. And I every once in a while my stomach would swell up, which made it difficult to breathe, and weird symptoms. So it was the post-COVID stuff that was the bad. That was what set it apart from other diseases, and the fact that there'd be days I'd feel completely better and wake up. I go to bed and I'd wake up gasping for breath, and like 2 a.m. I had to sit up, and then there's some heart stuff too. There was some vascular stuff, a regular heartbeat, and just a very strong, irregular heartbeat where you could feel it, and weird stuff like that. So, it was what it did to my body afterwards that really stood out as something, like not normal or natural. And once in a while, my wife would have some breathing issues, just out of the blue. It usually seemed to be an emotional component to it. If something upsetting happened or shocking happened, it would trigger sort of like a relapse in the symptoms. But, I pretty much was sure we didn't have COVID anymore. It was just, I don't know if it was like a poison. I mean, I have no idea what it is, right? It's not like a natural disease. And then this past summer, I got really strong and like it turned back the clock to where I was before COVID. And there's all these different protocols and things that we did, supplements and things. Maybe I'll talk about this. I'll make some sort of like a voice book or something on Amazon, and I'll describe all the different things that we did and went through at some point. But it rebuilt my system, and I was doing great. Like I just had energy every day, no breathing issues, no anything, no symptoms at all, and just like had lots of energy. You could see this from my videos, and we did a like a shit ton of farm work this past year. Got a lot of things accomplished, and like there was no, I didn't have to worry like if I was going to do some work, if it was going to be another bad day, right? Like like I never knew when I was going to have a day where I just felt weak or whatever it was, right? And then I had a prolonged sore throat that lasted, I don't know, like 6 months, and that went away finally. And I attribute that to I added some grapefruit seed extract to water I drink at night, and I started to drink more while I did longer voiceovers. That was more of a continued. I started to change the way I did videos, and I was doing some 2-hour long videos. I mean, this is before the Journey series, but I was, doing more voiceover stuff, and my voice just didn't recover. And, but plus I had a couple of swollen, my glands in my neck, throat were swollen sometimes, most of the time. And so that finally all went away, and I was just, I would say the past, since April, May of the past year all the way through the summer, I was in really good shape, like just completely turned back the clock. Like I felt, more youthful. So it was, mostly I felt like a blessing. Gone through the COVID stuff, and my body fought it off, and then I felt like I'm doing a lot better. So then my wife and I got sick. My daughter, she works basically in sort of like a restaurant type of a situation, and she was interacting with the public, and she got sick. A bunch of the people at work got sick, and my wife and I I had a little bit of a stomach bug before that, so I don't know if that's included in this or that was something different. Just, a little difficulty digesting my food, not a big deal. But then we started to have a fever and body aches. And when we had COVID, neither one of us had a fever, maybe some body aches, I don't know. Like it's hard to remember, but it wasn't significant. But we got really bad body aches and, a fever, and our energy levels just tanked, and we were sleeping like 14 hours a day. Just couldn't move. Just, very much more like the flu. And so my wife said it felt like the flu. She gets it every like 3 or 4 years. She thought it was the flu. And we were, I wasn't as sick as she was in the beginning, like she was a little bit more sick than I was. Neither one of us had any sort of respiratory issues, like there was no shortness of breath. So it wasn't like COVID at all. It was, not at all similar to what we experienced. And so she thought it was the flu. I was like, whatever. It seemed sort of severe for what we were, for the flu. Like usually if I had the flu, I was sick for a couple of days and, slept it off or whatever. And then, no big deal. Like I don't remember any really sort of severe week long too. This ended up being like 2 weeks long being sick. And we both had a cough, and our taste buds changed. Like things that we normally eat or drink tasted different, like seemed odd, right? Why would things taste different? And for me, I had stomach issues the whole time. My wife, not so much, but I was having trouble digesting our food, but neither one of us could eat. Like we could only eat about half of, or even a third of what we normally would eat. We had to force ourselves to eat. It was hard to cook food because we were so exhausted, like just didn't want to eat and really didn't, have the energy to cook anyway. But we were taking these supplements that, you needed to, eat something with the, the supplements. And the supplements had been, working before we got sick. So we felt maybe, force, make ourselves eat a little bit, take some supplements. But then I had this one night where I was like, I'm just done eating. Like I just, I'm going to stop eating altogether. And I got so weak and lifeless. And the other thing was, just even watching TV seemed overwhelming. It was loud and like it just, no motivation for anything to do in the physical world. Like I didn't want to eat, didn't want to, watch TV, didn't want to, I wasn't turning the computer on for days. No interest in making videos, no interest in, like I didn't watch the news at all. Like just, nothing. Like I didn't want to know anything about anything like that, right? Just no energy, just really low energy. And then after not eating for a day, I just slept and I felt like almost in a coma. Like I just couldn't move, couldn't really, the first night that I really got sick, I had like those circular thoughts where, you couldn't, stop thinking about certain things. I was waking up every 15 minutes. I'd sleep for 10 minutes, wake up for, half hour, go back to sleep and just, disrupted sleep. It was a really horrible night. That was like, a week before this thing happened where I lost all life's energy. It was like I was in a coma, no motivation to do anything, no motivation to fight back or care about it, right? Just completely, no vitality. And then I had a good night's sleep, and then slept during the day, and then my life's energy came back. Like it was noticeable. Like I had, motivation now and energy, and I could get up and do some things. And then I just kept on getting better from there, but feeling really lifeless. And, at that point, my wife and I are like, this isn't the flu. Like this is something more severe than the flu because of just, how hard it hit. But it was not anything like COVID the first time. So then it was about, 10 days in for me. It was a little bit longer for my wife. She was probably in about, 13 days, 2 weeks or whatever. She had been sick a couple days before I was. And like I just started to feel better. I had a good meditation and had an idea for a video, and I made that video. It was the first time I really wanted to turn the computer on and make a video. Like I lost all motivations to make videos. And then my, appetite returned, and I just got stronger every day. Like I've been, getting stronger every day. We got a humidifier that we had up in the closet. We put that on at night, and it helped me sleep better. I had this one heart palpitation thing that happened, and that might have been from taking, too much of these supplements. But other than that, it just consistently got better. But clearly was something that is, beyond the flu, right? And, and then we heard about this Omicron thing, and I read the symptoms. I haven't really done much research on it, but it seems like what I had, right? What we had, the symptoms that were listed is very vague, but it talked about prolonged fever and body aches, and then a couple of the other things, a dry cough, a cough that, we didn't have so much mucus. We had more mucus than when we had COVID the first time, but this cough was more of a dry cough, and, there was a little weakness in my upper chest, a little bit like I get a wheeze or something when I take a deep breath, but it wasn't like, anything like the first version of COVID. And for me, it was like they've, created these various biological weapons and they're just releasing them. I mean, that's how I've experienced it, that this is, their new strategy, right? To weaken the public and, weaken their immune systems and, do all these types of things to promote their medical agenda. And, as far as I can tell, that's what's happening here. Because this is nothing like the first thing. Like there's, no similarities. Almost no similarities. And our bodies reacted to them completely differently. And whatever immune response that we produced to the first COVID, it was, this thing was something different. And I feel better. I don't feel like there's going to be some lingering 6 months where I'm weak. Hopefully this is, something that I already feel stronger every day. And I'm able to produce more work every day. We went out for a walk, for a couple of days. We got outside. It was about 10 days where I wasn't outside at all, which is very, It got cold and crappy out at the same time. So it was one of those kind of double whammies. Because I felt all along moving around, getting exercise, and getting fresh air was important. Getting through, the first thing or whatever it was. And, then, like I said, I wasn't really watching anything to do with the news. My wife told me about the Omicron thing. And so we were probably like, 8 days into it, and I heard this Omicron, and I was, not really interested in it. But then I remembered there are people that told me that they had COVID 6 months before anybody talked about it, right? That COVID had been out there before, it was like the end of 2019, December, January, when they first started to report cases. And they had it like in November or before that, right? And so it had been out there for a while before the powers that be, made it public. And so I said, all right, look into the symptoms. And I was like, well, it sounds kind of like what we had, right? And certainly it wasn't the same thing as the first thing we had. Like that's, a definite. So my next, idea was that they're just releasing, these various biological weapons that aren't really necessarily deadly for most people, but they're going to weaken people, and then they can push a medical agenda and all these things. I mean, we've seen this before. There are other psychological operations where they just would do the same thing over and over again, right? And, it seemed odd. Like, why is this happening over and over again? Various things to do with, things were going on in schools, or, it would be a behavior that would be exhibited over and over again. So this is a pattern of something they do, and they're really pushing, disease and people being sick. And it's much easier to get people to accept a crappy new deal when they're just really weak and scared, right? And, that's the way that people are going to be as long as there's new diseases coming out all the time and, people experience them, because it was definitely not pleasant. Like I said, the 2 days that I had where I was just really lifeless, it was more like 3 or 4 days, but, really severely lost all vitality, like really being aware of not having any life force, right? Just laying in bed, no motivation to do anything, didn't want to eat, didn't want to watch TV, didn't want to, interact, didn't want to be on the computer. I mean, there was nothing in the physical world that I wanted to do. And, it was no energy, no vitality. I find it interesting. Like I always say that whenever I'm sick, there's always a spiritual component, and I look at everything as coming from God. And, having gone through that or whatever twice early on, like getting COVID in the beginning when no one really had it and no one really knew what it was about. And, just my relationship with the medical community is that I don't really like allopathic medicine. I'll use it if I have to. I'll go to the doctor and get some antibiotics or whatever if, I can't beat something on my own. But for the most part, allopathic medicine has screwed me over in the past, and I don't really trust it. And, my mom was very like a hypochondriac, so I usually just try to sleep it off and, get better on my own when I get sick. Don't like to deal with doctors, and, even more so now. And having learned alternative methodologies and medicines and things, as a family, we're able to, get through things and learn more about it and, do supplements and, go to some alternative doctor or whatever it is. And just doing what I do here, that I, got these diseases, whatever it is. The second thing, I mean, I assume it's whatever they're calling Omicron now. And, it's not, in some ways it was worse than COVID, but it seems like it's not going to linger like COVID. It's not, I feel better and stronger than I did after COVID. Like I just felt so weak after COVID for so long. Like I just couldn't get strong again. I just couldn't, turn the corner. And I already feel a lot better than I did post-COVID. And so, it's lingering a little bit, but like I said, I'm sleeping better, and, there's no, I had some weird dreams, maybe a couple nights ago for, the 2 or 3 nights in a row, I had weird, strange dreams and things like this. little emotional. I remember being angry, like, one day I was really sort of irritable and angry, maybe a couple days. But for the most part, I feel like it's, you know, not nearly as bad as the first COVID in terms of, how it left my body after I had it, right? But both things, like I said, my wife kept on saying it was the flu in the beginning. She felt it was like the flu, and then when suddenly, what you kind of realize is, something more than that, right? That they have supercharged these things. I mean, they're all, part of the same viral strain, possibly, whatever they've been playing around and manipulating with these things. But, the first thing, the second thing aren't, anything alike in terms of the symptoms and, having gone through it. And what I'm understanding is the second thing is way more contagious. It's going to sweep through the country. Like, I'm sure it's going to, a lot more people will have it. And depends on their fear factor and their reliance on, the medical community. We'll see how that plays out. But this is the new normal, right? You know, they're going to do this over and over again, and maybe the things will get more severe as we go on, and we'll have to deal with that as we go, right? And it appears that the medical solution that they're giving everybody is something that's going to blow out people's immune system. So, there'll just be this weakness and dependence on the beast, and every winter they'll come around and there'll be something new or something, more severe each time you get it or whatever it is, right? Like, I think the strategy is obvious at this point. So for me, doing the heartfulness system, the idea that miseries are divine blessings and that illnesses are the way to burn off your samskaric load, and that you're going to get sick in one way or another over the years. As you get older, your body doesn't work as well. It's a way to, boost your connection to divinity. My meditations have been really great. I had some good meditations, felt cleaned out. I had some good voiceovers that I felt were, inspired by some of those meditations. So, I mostly feel pretty positive. I feel a lot better now than I did post-COVID. More positive about this thing or whatever it is. And we'll see, right? Well, when my energy level fully returns and I'm like 100% healthy again, we'll see how long that takes compared to the first thing. But at least, I feel like we're on the right track here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalaughs. In the Ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.